right back.
And I also wanted to know if I could get your email address. I'm not sure if I have it on file, just to double check.
Yeah, hold on, let's have a look. I'll type it in here.
All right. Yeah, we were, as far as for the different types of governance options that are out there right now, it is kind of confusing for a lot of people, and I think it would be great if we had like I do spreadsheets, so I am actually sending you the spreadsheet, the player metric spreadsheet, so you can look that over, and that helps to break it down in certain sectors and identify skills and passions and the way that we can incentivize it. And so this is a work in progress. I got that right, I think. Okay. Got to make sure all the. All right, doing two things at once is sometimes difficult. Pardon me.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, if you look in your email box, there should be an invitation for you to view, edit the player metrics spreadsheet layout. And what we were talking about with the different governance options, to be able to have a spreadsheet where people can pick and choose like what bits and pieces that they want to autonomously assume for their organization or project.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is like where obviously if we are able to you know, kind of build in to the, like, effectively the front end management part of a, you know, a whole system platform, you know, the different options of how a, you know, a community could be structured, you know, then effectively then we've got a much more robust system.
Right.
You know, and anything that gives people choice is much more likely to be chosen because people have got options. Whereas if you're like, well, look, this is it, this is the only thing, either you can, and then effectively then what you're creating is, well, you know, one platform is going to require one database, another platform is going to require another database. Suddenly we're all right back at the starting block doing exactly the same thing that we've been doing all along, which just, that doesn't solve anything. So it's like what we've been thinking about is like, so what does universal back-end architecture look like in order to be able to build these things onto the front end? And in order to really enable that to occur, you know, what we need first and foremost is a really robust database that has all of the fields that would be required for any type of governance model to be able to onboard people and organizations in either way, and for them to then be able to funnel and choose exactly what it is that they want. And then depending on their choices, it automatically assigns them to a model that fits their choices. Because, you know, so if we actually approached it from that kind of lens and that kind of perspective, then, you know, suddenly we're creating something that is actually very, very sound. Which is why I think, like, at the moment, I think it's really important that, you know, the people, you know, like us that are thinking about what is the platform that needs to do that. What we need to be asking ourselves at this stage, I believe, is like, okay, well, who are the other players in the field that are thinking like this right now? And let's have some open communication between us, so that we actually build the one platform that enables all of the choices. Because then that way, you know, then we can actually have a really, really sound data system that, you know, any, like, and because I mean, we're looking at integrating into, you know, the platform, you know, sovereign identity, you know, we're looking at integrating in as part of that the means that lots of other platforms and organizations, everything will be able to plug into it. We'll be able to plug in our funding mechanism into that, so that that can then become the tool that enables funding pools to begin to occur within the larger system, because effectively it will start to become, you know, and create self-generating funds. So, you know, and we've got some other interesting technologies that I'm working on with a few other people at the moment, where we're going to be kind of connecting these in also. And also, as part of this, because we're working on the Regen Database project, the Regen Database is effectively going to be like a social and environmental acupuncture identifier system. So effectively, like, because we're creating this system, and this is what we've been working on for the last 11 months, is the development of this tool that uses kind of satellite information to locate, you know, sort of information, case studies, resources, solutions, funders, talent, all kinds of different things on a global scale. But also, because we're using satellite data, we're also able to begin to identify where there's degradation in specific locations around the planet. So then effectively, by having the platform that can then mobilize the people and the organizations and the resources, means that we'll better be able to target that into the specific areas and key points that need to be addressed and looked at, so that then, you know, we'll have a much more effective means to mobilize. So, you know, it kind of makes sense that we all, I think that, you know, that we all start to really look at how we can sync our systems and our thoughts and our, you know, what it is that we're all building out, so that they all start to really plug in and work effectively and efficiently together. So yeah, so I really, by the way, I really enjoyed going through your stuff. Took me a while to get through it, but yeah, I enjoyed going through it. I'm interested, like, 'cause some of the things that you have, like, there's a lot of like having to kind of read and go through lists. And have you thought about how to begin to create it so that it's more sort of dynamic and interactive? Have you given that any thought about how you do that?
Check out that spreadsheet I sent you just a minute ago. That's what we did, is because there are multiple lists, because we're looking at different metrics for different pieces within the whole framework of participation. So
we're looking at the whole systems thinking on from a systemic level out, right? We want to be able to identify what's on the polar fringes of either end of the spectrum, what's really working and what's really not working, and be able to provide a methodology for transition that is on a basis of positive impact. You know, on that forward thinking and forward movement, forward collaboration, continual iteration and upgrade.
and
No different from the technology field processes.
And also acknowledgement that people are where they're at, and we can't push people to change. They have to find it out for themselves. And so we, you know, when we're able to identify the base sectors within a community that they can go look into, and then start learning, okay, what chakra is this aligned with? What harmonic frequency is this aligned with? How does my positive influence affect my community in this sector? How does my positive reaction and response to things, and how do I get to that positive reaction and response? You know, and doing that introspection and looking within first, starting with personal healing, because this is all about healing, whether we're talking about the individual healing or the community healing. We have all these broken communities, the bridges have been broken, torn down between ages. You know, elderly are considered a waste of space in a majority of the population now, despite the fact that they have experiential knowledge and information that needs to be passed down through the generations, but they're being cut off from their grandkids. They're being cut off from, you know, the younger generations, so they're not able to pass that knowledge and information on. All of these things are big factors in how we proceed as a collective in our beliefs that we need to be creating this new infrastructure. In recognizing that we're not going to be able to push this on people. We can have little communities, but we have to spread the information out beyond those tiny communities. You know, those localized communities have to be able to have a way of saying to the general population in a big city, for example, hey, you know, there's another opportunity here. There's vertical gardening in this hotel. No way. You know, like, how do I get involved in that? In a city like New York, how do you do that? How do you do rooftop gardening and get people more involved in understanding that? Well, they just need a little information. And if they have the curiosity, they'll be able to learn. They'll be connected with the right resources, and that will expand their journey.
Yeah.
So
Do you know, just out of interest, like listening, following from that little piece of information, then, do you know David Gershon?
We know about him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's hooked up with a buddy of ours, Jonah Lyon, doing the Jedi Academy, which is listed on our
Alliance page.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I had a really
planning.
right. Yeah, I had a
And-
really long conversation with him. It's about 3.5 hours the other day. We were like went into all kinds of interesting areas, because part of what it is that I'm really driving at with all of the things that we're kind of doing is about you know, kind of rolling back the effects of climate change, you know, and effectively really reversing a lot of the damage that's been done, you know, ecosystem repair. You know, I'm coming up from it very specifically from a, you know, an environmental perspective and lens. You know, that's kind of like what my focus is how do we restore this planet to the beauty that it's supposed to be? And obviously, as part of that, we need new systems, we need new ways of doing things, which is kind of what's brought me into the field of you know, governance, economics, all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, we just need to change fucking everything. So like, okay, so then it's like, right, in order for us to do that, you know, we need to kind of start to look at, you know, new interesting ways of social engagement, new ways of, you know, being able to get people to do things that is against their general way that they've operated up until now. Which is obviously where, you know, you start to create interesting sort of engagement systems around these governance models, which is the stuff that we're talking about at the moment. David Gershon has actually been demoing and test driving a wicked system for actually engaging people with a kind of like bottom-up, top-down approach from like city blocks, communities, into cities, and they've actually been already working with it and using it in cities in Africa and in the States, and they're going to be able to make several cities carbon neutral within 5 years, which means that they reckon that with the right amount of funding, they reckon that they could make every single city on this planet carbon neutral within 20 years. And they have a whole system for doing that. So like, I've started to have some further conversations with him, and we're having some follow-up conversations a little bit later on how to begin to integrate some of the things that he's doing with obviously some of these new governance models. And I think it'd be great as those conversations begin to develop to have you guys involved in those, because I think for us to really make something that is, you know, ultimately is a global system that can really, like, you know, is massive kind of meta thinking, and be able to kind of really create the architecture for that to happen. You know, I think that, you know, we all really need to get our heads together on that, and actually be able to incorporate all of the different pieces that we're all holding, because that's one of the things that's become super clear to me as as we've been kind of developing all of these connections and these networks, and I've connected with all these amazing technology organizations. As I said, we've got over 2,000 of these amazing inventions now, that I'm just like, okay, so many of these could solve so many of these issues. We just need to have a real strategic plan as to how to integrate them into these whole systems that we're all beginning to look at, and how they can be, begin to be brought in and tested, measured, and actually like integrated into these systems, so that they take care of the different sort of systems around health and education, and water supplies, food supplies, supply chains, all of these kind of different areas, and how we can start to integrate them, because we're connected directly with Buckminster Fuller Institute. We're working quite closely with them, and so like we're really they've like the members of Buckminster Fuller and the guys from Communitas. They've actually been working and developing like a regenerative fund, which is is pretty sizable, and how to begin to direct that into key acupuncture points. So we're sort of looking at it from their perspective, and they're obviously they've had years and years working on what does regenerative systems really look like, and then obviously when you start to integrate that into the people that have been developing the governance around the information and the data flows and the people, and you start to have so much of a more robust system. Because one of the things that they've been beginning to work on is like all of the different funders in the field, the people that are really interested in actually beginning to direct money into the kind of thing that we're talking about here. So like they're kind of creating this massive ecosystem of fund networks. And then like we've got other people that have been working on the technologies for measuring supply chains, and actually really beginning to understand how to make that much more efficient. And that's kind of what they do. And it's like we're kind of like looking at it from a perspective of like geotag, geolocation data systems that really bring all of those pieces together and start to knit them together. So it's like by having that as a unified system that we can then plug into a system that enables people and organizations to onboard into something like that, then we've got something really, really amazing, and something that will ultimately be able to start to really solve a lot of the issues. And if we can start to demonstrate that, I mean, there is literally trillions of pounds available that can be directed into things like this if you can solve how to make something like that effective and efficient. And that's kind of like
First Mobile Task Force is one of the projects that I published last year, I believe, or no, it was the beginning of this year. Earth's Mobile Task Force being like that first responder for disasters. Right now, FEMA and other first responders are very delayed in their response and action to global natural disasters. And there are those people and organizations and businesses out there already ready to be on the front line, but because of regulations and whatnot, they are being stopped before they are able to come out and actually help. And so, if we can get that going for them to be able to actually do what they're there to do, they're ready and waiting anywhere, and just like that's that emergency responder. There are a lot of emergency responders in the world that are already qualified to do the job, whether it's for medical, environmental, and other disasters of multiple proportions. And so this sounds like something that we could totally help with in making people more interested in engaging in that. Although on the spreadsheet that I shared, I referenced the UN sustainability goals. What we're doing here is not being in agreement with their plan, but in agreement with their recognition that we have to address these issues.
Yeah, for sure. Well, likewise.
Yeah.
You know, there are definitely other things that need to be looked at, but the way that one needs to go about it isn't about becoming like, you know, carbon neutral at this stage. We've got to go way beyond that. You know, we have to think way beyond that. It's like, you know, if we're only working towards becoming carbon neutral in the next X amount of years, we are fucked. So it's like, you know, for us to really get to where we need to go, you know, we've got to actually be rolling things backwards, not just kind of like, you know, greenwashing our way to neutral. You know, so in order to be able to do that, you know, there has to be a whole completely different way of thinking, which is a, you know, a different way of doing business, a different way of approaching all these things. Do you know Oliver from Project Helix?
I don't believe so.
I think you'd really like his model. So he's developed a way of completely restructuring companies into abundant zero profit organization models. So effectively, and he's been developing all of the legal structure to be able to restructure an organization. So as an organization comes on board, effectively that organization then goes through the process of reorganizing their own organizations to become an abundant zero profit organization. So effectively they make what they need in order to do fair pay for all of the people that work within the organization. The people that own the organization get what they need, and the business gets what it needs in order to move forwards. And then any additional profits are then fed back into the commons. And then it's a way of beginning to redistribute the funds that are part of that commons amongst the communities of the different organizations that begin to plug into the system. The way that he's put it is a lot more eloquent than the way that I've just come up with it. I mean, that like just basically surmises in a couple of sentences what he took, you know, a lot of pages to describe. But his, and you know, it's a lot of, you know, he's been kind of really working on the legal architecture, but also the other part of what they have, because they're a collective. And this is one of the really interesting things, which is why I think it's really important that we look at how we align all the pieces. They've got a platform, a platform building engine. So basically what that is you can throw video in it, you can throw pictures in it, you can connect API connections into it, and then you can basically, you could draw a picture on a napkin of what you wanted the user interface to look like, take a photo of it, load it in, it'll then completely break all of the parts apart. You'll be able to drag and drop until you get the user interface exactly how you want it to look. You can then color it how you like, and then you can just write some lines of like, well, I'd like an algorithm to run that's going to connect this field of data to that field of data. I'd like it to begin to search the information like this. I'd like it to present it like X, Y, and Z. I'd also like to add a layer of machine learning into this so that it can really begin to identify patterns of use in this way, that way, and this way. And then once you've kind of created all of the information and input it in, it basically spits out all the back-end code for the entire platform, so that you don't have to spend months getting someone to design it. You don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on getting someone to build it, but instead it creates it all for you. So he's one of the team within the Alliance network that we have, which is like, you know, so which is why at the moment we're kind of working on how to really get all of the pieces that we, you know, that we've all got, how we can really get them to begin to slot together so that we can then start to use that effectively as inputs and then just input it into the system, create all of the fields that we really want it to understand and work with and connect up, and then it will create the platform for us.
Okay,
Sweet.
cool. That leads us to our previous conversation that we had about databasing, web scraping, and auto organizing, and all that good stuff. Like Kumu, which we were just talking to Josh about earlier. That's on our to-do list to go check out today. And like those other two,
New maps.
well, not new maps. That's a little bit on the different side, but
Okay.
Neo4j and that other, I starts with a G. It's an iteration that another company made from Neo4j with their own panel, which is basically digital forms. Instead of having to code it each side, the way they have it set up for scripting, where you got a digital form and go, okay, I want this and this and this, have it as toggleable and selectable as possible within each form, so you can customize it. And that brings us back to what we were bringing up earlier about segmented search. If we could do segmented search, say I want this and then this type of relatability, and see where they diverge, like having a preview, that's absolutely invaluable for all these different types of projects that we want to do. And for whatever reason, it's not translating very well to these different minds. And like some of these people that we're talking to, we know that are brilliant. They're amazingly intelligent, yet it just doesn't snap. Some people need it said 20 different times. That's very painful to go through that process. Sometimes you got to do it in a different kind of a language that's all hoodoo voodoo, like 5D stuff, like the way Lumi talks.
Yeah, see, like I've got no time for that. It's like, you know, like what takes somebody 4 or 5 words to say, then like other people are turning it into like a whole paragraph. I'm sorry, but you know, like my time is precious and I just don't have time for that. Like, you know, I get it. And, you know, I have also had a very spiritual upbringing, so I do understand that stuff. But sometimes you can get so lost in it that you just never actually get anything done. And like the thing about like how we operate is we're doers. You know, we want to actually like not just talk about it, but actually just get on and actually do it. So yeah, so what we're finding at the moment is like effectively what you're talking about is like the combination of Airtable and Stacker working together. So I'll tell you what might be a really good idea is give us, like, we're just literally creating the kind of the like some of the base architecture around exactly what it is that you're talking about there. And like we should have that, I reckon, kind of bare bones functioning within about 2 weeks. And then what would be probably super useful, because what we're looking to do is we're looking to share it across all of the networks. So like, you know, you guys and all of the other people that are network holders, because what we need is unified databasing. Without it, you know, we're just doing the same thing over and over. So like, we're kind of just creating this base system.
Well, most people are insane now. It's just how society has been brought up is this.
Exactly. But I mean, that stuff just isn't like, it just doesn't compute, does it? I mean, let's be honest, like we all see it, we understand it. Others don't understand it, but we really do actually get it. So it's like, okay, well, I think now is that moment where we really need to like start actually practicing what it is that we're preaching, and actually start to actually do the doing of the sharing. So like, and so that we start to really facilitate and coordinate effectively. So yeah, so the couple of things that we're looking to do to really help that along is the first part, as I said, we're kind of like just building a base architectural system using Stacker and Airtable. It might be worth maybe you guys like familiarizing yourself just with those 2 systems, just so that you kind of get an understanding of how you might begin to put information into that, because I think the combination of those two things potentially, I mean, it's not perfect, of course, that's why we're building a platform, but as a means to be able to start to demonstrate some of what it is that we're talking about to a software engineer that can then build it out, it'll be a really useful tool for us to be like, right, look, these are the fields, this is how the data needs to go in, this is how we need to start kind of having this as a back-end system. And then obviously like the process of like the organizing and the onboarding and the alignment and the education, I mean, that's effectively, that's the front end coming in to the system, but behind the system there's got to be a fucking big ass database. But in order for us to build that kind of data system, we need to first create a base architecture, so that we can then translate it to a software engineer. So that's kind of like what we're kind of just beginning to do that at the moment. You know, we've had you know, I guess, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks on it. So we're beginning to kind of like look and see how it can all potentially connect. We're just like, we've been filling out all of the different data fields across what we think potentially could work as a way of structuring. And then like, it'd be great, like once that's done probably in a couple of weeks time, to then have another meeting with you, like also with Andrea, and actually like show you it, so that then, you know, you can kind of look at it from your lens and think, well, you know, I think that there should be some other, you know, some additional fields on there that maybe we haven't thought of, and vice versa. Because like we're having a meeting with Josh actually next week on Tuesday, I think it is, where like that's kind of what we're going through, myself, Josh and Andrea, so that we kind of like put the fields that we think need to be there from our lens, and then we can kind of structure that, and then like once we've got then the sort of the bare bones, then we'll hand it over to you guys and the other network holders, so that we can all start to create a unified data system that can effectively then start to become the back end of the larger architectural piece that we're all wanting to build.
And that's what we've been very
adamant about trying to
it,
encourage
to get working, that we can all work on this together, that it doesn't have to be like, oh, this is my proprietary information and I want to hold on to it until I've got it perfect the way I envisioned it, and then I'll share it with you. No, that's not the kind of world that we're creating here. So it can't be the way that we start. And so this is great.
Exactly. And we are all about that. You know, the way that we're approaching everything is, you know, we've got to be sharing all of this stuff. You know, and it's no point in like us just going away and working in little silos and doing our own thing. It's like it has to be ultimately inclusive, and we've really got to start looking and working with, because there are people out there at the moment that are developing, you know, these kinds of ideas and these platforms, but they're coming from it, personally, I think, from like the, you know, the wrong angle. You know, they're not really giving that full thought to what whole system architecture really needs to be, and they're kind of like looking at building platforms, but like it's almost like they're kind of like half, well, not even half pieces, just like small pieces of it, and thinking that they've got like the whole thing. And it's like, you don't have the whole thing until you start to be able to really integrate multiple layers of data and actually begin to really like assimilate that and run algorithms across all of that, and have people begin to interact with all of these different data systems, which is obviously, that's why we're also working obviously on this Regen data system, because the Regen data system is going to enable the facilitation of new energy projects, new waste management projects, new reforestation, permaculture, agriculture, you know, all these kind of things that are key to, you know, a societal system to be able to fully function and operate. But obviously we want to make sure that when people start to integrate some of these things and beginning to build out these projects, they're using what the cutting edge science is right now on what it means to be regenerative, not sustainable, not just net zero, but like actually rolling stuff backwards and actually really beginning to like have a proper positive impact. So yeah, so like, you know, that's why, you know, I thought when I started seeing like some of your lines of conversation, I was like, whoa, I think we really need to like touch base and connect and actually start to kind of share where we're at, so that we can actually start to create a more organized structure around how we begin to approach it. So, which brings me round then to the other bit, which I think is something that we're looking to do, you know, very soon.
Contracts. Contracts.
Yeah.
Make sure we're all starting on the same page and identify any kind of deviation and then be able to address it.
Yeah.
Like right off the bat. Like, hey, I know you want to be really open in these projects. I want to be really open in these projects. Lyra does. You know, Brett.
Josh.
At the same time, we've all been around the block a few times, and we know that we don't want to go through the same frustrations. We want to learn from those frustrations and mistakes and go, okay, I was too open. I shared too much. I didn't get enough confirmation before. So what can we do? Well, we can get stuff written down, and in the legal field, if it's not on paper, it didn't happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully it came through. Are you still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, your screen froze for a second.
Yeah.
Hopefully it came through on your end that you were able to interpret the whole foundation being neutral and balanced and reciprocal.
And where we all have an outline together of what each of our roles is, that we're making these agreements that you're going to be working on your project here, and you're wanting some input from us on this project, and vice versa, looking at that reciprocity as like the baseline of how we ensure that everybody's autonomous lens is expressed and shared collectively.
Which requires accountability also.
Yeah.
So that's why we added that in, is you as the individual have full reign over anything and everything you want to do. We just need to know about it so you can get full credit for it, and you can have full protection. You have full involvement, you know,
and recognition.
yeah, there's so much we have stacked up already and put together, and the manual is like just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's
consolidated fashion.
Yeah, well, it's the same, because like I've been kind of working with Josh and Brett and Andrea very closely for, you know, quite a long time now, and you know, I've been kind of I instigated Josh and Brett and Andrea to align their systems and for them to come together and actually go, right, okay, well, let's have a conversation around our, you know, our whole process, our onboarding, our governance, how do we do this, how do we do that, what, you know, what are the agreement fields, what are the, you know, how do we begin to really manage these different parts? Because what I found was when I started to instigate the conversation between the two of them, and they started like having these discussions and aligning their pieces, what they then discovered obviously is that one person has got some amazing stuff in one area, and then somebody else has got some amazing stuff in another area. And it's like, well, when those two pieces come together, wow, that's really amazing in more than just one area. It's like, you know, it's multiple areas at the same time. So it's like where we've been kind of working on that, it's effectively what you're talking about here is it's the same kind of principles. It's having agreement fields in place that enables accountability for what it is that you're supposed to be doing as part of
and starting from there. Starting from there, enacting the same properties of SDGs.
Yeah, well, having all of that
sustainable development with yourself and your partners, collaborators, anybody that you're interacting with.
Yeah.
What is what can be done and maintained to hone the situation to a sweet spot, so everybody's just vibing. You got full on mojo, like full blast.
Yeah.
And everybody's feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is it, isn't it? It's like, and because
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that you're talking about at the moment is like, because obviously we've all got our slightly different lens on it, because like where where Andrea's governance thinking comes from is like she's kind of like a meta full global system architect, and then like Josh, like the way that he operates, it's very much like a kind of a holacracy based kind of like sort of community based system, but like he's also got how that then is able to scale into a larger system. So it's like, and because you guys are coming at it from a meritocracy lens, it's interesting, like just listening to you talk actually about the fact that, because there are some slight nuances around that. And it's like, obviously for us to begin to work together right at the start, it's like, well, what lens are we actually going to be approaching this from? Are we going to be approaching it from
Exactly, right?
Are we going to be approaching it from ours? Or are we going to be looking at how those two come together and meet somewhere in the middle? Or like, or do we like amalgamate, well, there's bits of yours that are really good in this particular bit, and there's bits of ours that's like better in this other bit. And it's like, how does that begin to look for us to actually arrive at a set of agreements? Which is why I'm like, I think that, because obviously what we're talking about here is building a platform that does exactly this, what we're talking about right now. And for us to be able to do that and create that, we also need to be able to arrive at an agreement initially that enables us to at least do that. And then we can obviously figure out how those pieces fit together as we're creating the larger system. Because ultimately, you don't want to just bring them all together and have it as like a unified system that is just, well, I don't know, maybe we do want that. I don't know. We'll discover that later. But like, like the process of actually like, being able to have these multiple ways that different people and organizations can reorganize themselves is, I think, will ultimately be the thing that makes it really interesting. And I think for us to begin to start looking at how we can work together, I think like, the initial parts have probably got to be us actually starting to think about obviously what it is that we're creating here as a unified field. And then for us to basically just have, a set of agreements in place around, okay, well, look, this is what we're looking to do. This is like what the end thing is going to be. And then because of that end thing, for us to arrive at that place, we need to be able to share information. We need to be able to share data. I am completely open with how I do things like this. I'm not, I don't believe in keeping shit for myself. It's like, I'm very much into open to the field of actually really sharing and unifying. But for us to be able to do that effectively and efficiently, I want to make sure that, we all feel comfortable in that space of being able to do that, so that we can all arrive at a unified space where, we can build out this thing that we can all see. And ultimately, like, then we'll have this amazing tool that people can use and can be blueprinted, other organizations can take and use it and however they want to use it. I mean, like, this is the other part. Are you thinking in terms of like how you're seeing the ultimate platform around this? Are you thinking that it should be an open source platform, or are you thinking that it should be something that effectively is stewarded in a certain way so that it means that it's not corruptible by anybody? What's your thoughts on that?
For one thing, I wanted to address what you were just talking about, how we're looking at this cohesion and mesh and being able to all work in the same environment. And an image came to mind of Baby Yoda and the words, the undulation of the buzz. I just thought I had to share that with you. But that's what we're looking at, you know, that hum, that purr, you know, that we can just all ride together. And yes, there would be unity in that, but there's also an undulation, because there will be the autonomous individuals and organizations that want to be a little bit different but similar. And that's, you know, how can we make that just keep going forward along the path and not crashing into each other? And did I totally derail you when I said that?
So, like, autonomy and sovereignty, choice, freedom, is very important to all of us.
Yeah.
And we took some time to look at it from an organizational perspective, like tax exempt status. What kind of organization do you have? Is it nonprofit? Is it for profit? And they show by their scope of operation a degree of niceness or imposition over another from a balance point. So that's something we would really love to explore, not only with the work that we've had, but get feedback, get it visualized into like a map where we can use it as a baseline reference for other people to go, oh, I like this. I want to select it from this rank over here. And we can see the beauty of how it kind of sprouts out like roots or a branch or a rainbow, you know, in these different types of diversity, all sprouting from these different levels of consent and smart contracts, basically.
And as far as to answer the other question you had, yes, open source is where we want it to be situated, but there are ways of being able to ensure that it doesn't get corrupted at the same time. And one of those is those pillars of ethics. And
it doesn't all have to be open source, at least
no.
from our perspective. We're thinking, like, we're huge fans of open source. I've been into it for over 20 years. And from a perspective of someone just entering a realm like software, like, I'm not used to software. You know, we didn't have computers back in the day. I want to have some access to play around with this stuff without being trapped. And then, okay, if I'm going to choose for that field, like, I want to be Windows only in that fenced off. I don't know if you got into it in the contract section. What about it being open source and freely available, or freeware, or something to that effect, for anybody that is operating on a reciprocal basis, where they get the software or get access to the portal, and as long as they're contributing, and they can do whatever they want, right? If they're a business that's, say, for profit, okay, you're going away from the reciprocal nature in a business sense. You're kind of extracting out, deviating, and that's not necessarily bad. It's just one option, right? With that option, okay, if you hit over 25 or 50 employees as a business, 25, now you need to go ahead and pay.
There's a contract.
You need to have pay for service or maintenance or some sort of extra features or something like that.
So some kind of like payment on the platform, is that what you're suggesting?
Right. Yes. Whether it's a service or maintenance or a feature set.
Okay, so yeah, this is probably like some of the areas where we definitely need to actually like have some discussion around also, because like from where we're kind of looking at it, I mean, this is obviously where like the funding mechanism that I'm creating starts to change the game a little bit, because obviously what that starts to enable is, you know, funding pools to be made available to organizations, and so that we can actually start to do some carrot dangling towards making organizations want to become part of a new resource-based economic system, so that they want to start to restructure their organizations, so that they want to actually start to play nicer, so that they get access to the resources that they need. And in order for them to do that, they then start to feed their resources into the collective commons. So, you know,
we're in alignment on that.
Yeah.
From what we're hearing. And then, like, if someone's just a user, they just want to sponge and not give anything back, not give any feedback, you pay straight up. You know, if you're not helping to contribute, you're a drain on the resource because you're not helping to build it up. The whole concept is to have as much of a fluid build as possible, and embolden, to strengthen, to support in all these different directions. And if you're not going to help that,
I think that's where, like, I think that having, I think this is super interesting, by the way, this conversation. So, like, I think that, like, this is beginning to throw up where I think it's really important for us to have these different, like, systems and the different front ends that, dependent on the type of person that begins to come in, or organization that comes in, through the process of onboarding, they naturally find themselves categorized within a specific area or a specific function within the larger whole. Because obviously, like, what we're, you know, I'm not really interested in having, you know, people as, or the type of organizations on board with the kind of things that we're engaging in, that aren't interested in actually, like, contributing in any way.
Right.
If they're not interested in contributing, I'm not really interested in having them involved, particularly.
Right.
Well, what we're looking at also is the government entities. So, like, municipalities and governments and cities and so forth. And how at this moment there's a lot of disarray, and there's actually a whole bunch of funds that are being made available by government for sense making, for applications of sense making, creating tools for sense making and frameworks for sense making. And they, you know, they would be willing to pay for these tools if they're given a identifiable what is it, correlation, I would say, based on what their needs are. So it's needs with tools. Let's see how we can help them identify that more quickly.
That's relational mapping.
And that's that's a part of that relational mapping. And then, you know, they may not want to, in the beginnings, reciprocate, and that's why they would be paying for the service. But after a certain amount of time, you know, some of the employees may start seeing the benefit of the reciprocatory actions.
Yeah. Well, for the larger organizations like governments and counties and different types of jurisdictions like that, those would be large financial injections anyway, right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, those are the kind of organizations that will probably float you £100 million to actually build out a system like this. Ultimately, if everything really functions in the way, you know, and we actually, because I mean, what we're looking to start to create at the, well, what we started actually creating at the moment, I've got a meeting in 15 minutes about exactly this actually, is about the kind of how the Regen database connects in with this, and how we can start to, you know, like we're kind of going to create a full presentation around that, so that people can, you know, because that's the kind of thing that we can then present to the UN and other organizations, and be like
Right.
this will solve X, Y, and Z SDGs. And then this platform that we're looking to create between us all, when those two pieces come together and really connect, that solves all the rest of them. And it's like, you know, so then by having these two things beginning to come together and have it as a full system architecture that can really, like, you know, channel resources, people, projects, organizations where it's needed to solve all of these SDGs, you know, of course you're going to want to give us, you know, £250 million to do that. You know, we're going to solve everything that you need to solve in this amount of money. So, you know, that's kind of like the sort of the next stages for us is, you know, beginning to kind of create the sort of the presentations around how all of the different pieces start to come together and actually, like, they really connect, and they start to become effective when they start to all really play together. So yeah, so I guess, like, kind of, you know, next steps from us anyway, you know, we'll continue to build out this architecture system so that we can share that with you guys. I think it'd be really great to, I'll have a chat with Andrea, but I think it'd be really useful for us to jump on a call between us in the next couple of weeks anyway, so that we can kind of, like, start to have some conversation around the process of creating the platform, because obviously I think it would be super useful for us to arrive at a set of agreements around that, and that might take, you know, some time anyway, thrashing out some things backwards and forwards until we're all totally happy with it anyway. You know, that's not going to be a single conversation, I'm sure. But I think that that's a conversation that definitely needs to be initiated. And then the other part is, over the next few weeks, I'm looking for somebody that's absolutely amazing at using Discord. Like, I kind of know my way around it, but I could really do with a master at it. So, I mean, I don't know if there's any people that you know that fit into that category. But if they do, please do connect us, because I think one of the next things I'd like to do is to create a you know, let's call it a new Earth operating system Discord, that's effectively, you know, we can then start having all of the different fields in that underneath, so that, like, all of these millions of, I'm sure you've got shed loads of threads on Telegram already yourselves, certainly we do. And it'd really be great to start to have a unified space that we can all tap into, and actually then, like, monitor what all of the other threads are doing, so that we can actually start to see, oh, right, okay, you're already having those discussions with those, okay, I don't need to do that. And, you know, so that's kind of like I think the next phase would be really helpful for us to just have, like, a unified server, which, you know, Discord is that, and also it enables you to effectively have Zoom, like, you know, its own conversations, audio and video and everything, all inside Discord. So, you know, I think that would probably be quite a useful space to migrate to, and to, like, bring all of these Telegram threads over, and all of the people that are in them, so that we can start to kind of begin to see a sort of a unified field and all of the different things that are beginning to emerge around that. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Does that seem like a good idea?
I brought it up to a bunch of people a couple years ago.
It does, absolutely. And then I just want to make sure that you check your email when we're done with this meeting. There are some links that I've shared. One of them is a spreadsheet that I've been working on, and I'm asking others to input data into, and this is the tech-based community organizational spreadsheet. So it talks about like, you know, the different, like how to contact, what the organization is, conversations to join, project summary, and then it goes on to projects in progress, what are the proposed projects are, the service functions, front-end features versus back-end features, you know, so that we can start getting this data consolidated into one area where everybody can look and say, oh, well, I'm looking and getting involved in such and such project.
Sure.
What organizations are doing that project? So that's just a start, and you are welcome to use the information, do whatever you want, tweak it around, because this is about, of course, again, how are we going to be able to work together if we don't start working together?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you see, this is like kind of what, I mean, what you're talking about there is like, that's kind of what we're looking to integrate Airtable and Stacker to
Okay.
do, rather than it just being like a, you know, effectively like an Excel sheet, because obviously Excel doesn't enable you to cross and link and connect across multiple
Don't
fields
use
and do
Excel.
searches and stuff. Yeah, so like, I think rather
To
than
do like pivot tables and all that. Yeah.
I use Google Sheets.
Yeah.
What I'm
right.
using right now are Google Sheets.
It'll still allow you to do all those functions,
Yeah.
but
we are
the way
happy
it's set
to
up.
transfer
Yeah.
to any other system as long as it's a collaborative
Yeah.
system
Well,
that
that's
we're all working.
exactly that. I mean, that's why because we've been kind of doing a bit of research into like, how do we, like this kind of mapping of organizations, function, etc., etc. How do we like really be able to cross-reference the different fields and actually be like, okay, well, you know, I want to look up all of the organizations that fit into that, and it for
Right.
them to bring it up. So like Stacker and Airtable, and that's what we're creating, is the architecture for that, so that we can all start to input. So what I might do is I'll have a look at your Excel sheet in a view of maybe there's some fields in it that would be useful to incorporate into that larger piece. But I'm not going to fill that out. I've got about 2,000 organizations.
That's okay. Don't worry.
So like, so I don't want to fill it in there and then fill it in the other one as well. So like, we'll do that in one and just do it in one go. But
Sounds good.
because you know, that still be massively time consuming otherwise. So yeah, so like once we've kind of got that, then that'll be the bit, again, that'll be the piece that we share around, so that everyone can kind of fill that in and start to have a unified system that we can actually really begin to search by function, and actually then be able to use that as a means to show, you know, a software engineer, look, this is kind of what we want it to do, but we want these algorithms to run on the system also, you know, and that's kind of, because you can, I mean, in this platform building engine, you can load in stuff from other programs, you know, it's kind of unifies data, I mean, it's an amazing tool what they've created, and they've been offered millions of pounds for it. And they're just like, yeah, it's not for organizations that aren't going to be doing something amazing with it.
Good.
So yeah, so
I have them open on my screen. We will be looking into those today. Is there a link, or do you just want to wait and hold off on that until you've got your piece?
Yeah, let's get some like reasonable architecture, because at the moment we're still kind of like batting it backwards and forwards a little bit. So I think like once we've kind of just got a base idea, and we'll know more about that, like once I've kind of had the meeting with Andrea and Josh around that specifically next week, and that's on Tuesday, and then probably by the end of next week we should have a, you know, maybe a working version that can at least start to, you know, we can start to input things in, and then obviously what we can then do is create a shared version of that everybody can then start to connect into and begin to like fill out the information. And obviously if we then show everybody what the, you know, the kind of the system is, and also what we're looking to do is, because in Stacker you can create a form, so that then like somebody just fills out the form, and then it automatically populates it into everywhere that it needs to go inside the system. And then you can kind of search by function inside it. So like, and Airtable integrates perfectly with Stacker, and then you can also take that and you can then export it into a Kumu map and stuff like that. So they're like, it starts to integrate a little bit. So so definitely have a look at that, familiarize yourself with it.
Sure.
And then yeah, then in the next couple of weeks we'll you know, we can start to share that around. But in the meantime, before that, I'll have a chat with Andrea and let's set up jumping on a group call between us.
Sounds like a great plan. We are all about working. I've got a computer open here, ready to do whatever needs to be done. You know, this is great, and we want to keep on this momentum. So we won't hold you from your next meeting. I know that you had another meeting that you're going to.
Yeah, I've got
really
a whole 6 minutes.
We really appreciate you meeting with us today, Mark, and we look forward to.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You know, I think, you know, where I've been kind of fitting into this whole crazy story that's unfolding, because, you know, I'm not a system architect, but I am a strategist, and also, like, you know, I'm kind of bringing you know, a financial arm into this that nobody else is bringing into this field right now. So it's like, you know, obviously when that goes online, that's why I want to really make sure that we're all on the same page. We're all kind of like approaching it from the same space, and that we're all like kind of have got the same, where we've all got the same thing in mind. It's like, well, if we can create a unified space, then, you know, obviously beginning to kind of like flow funding into that unified space is going to be much easier than if there's a space over there and one over there and one over here. It's like, well, you know, we've got a funding engine that connects with ours, but, you know, nobody else has got that. It's like, well, that's not really going to work. What we need is, you know, a unified space where the funding engine can just connect directly to it. The Regen Database can connect directly to it. It's like, you know, we can really start to create that unity, and the unification of all of the sum of the parts coming together, you know.
Amen. I like that.
Amen.
Wonderful.
Hallelujah.
Raise the roof on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many ideas and just so much to get done. We're ready to just get to it as soon as the next person is.
Yeah, well, likewise, we're kind of like we're kind of like the same, you know, but, you know, I'm also keen to make sure that it's also with people that they're really on the same page. They're not just talking about it, you know, they're
right.
like, they actually, you know, because there's a lot of people that are talking about like unifying the field, but they're not actually doing anything to unify the field. They're just talking about it. And it's like, well, you know, that's not really making it happen. So it's like, you know, I've been like facilitating so many conversations, people coming together. You know, I've been organizing international deals for organizations bringing new health systems out into the collective and all kinds of different things. So we're kind of like networked and connected with all kinds of different layers. And it's
awesome.
like, okay, now that we really understand, and I've got a pretty good picture now of a lot of the players in the field and the key systems and all these kind of different things. It's like, okay, so now what we need is the tool to unify. And for us to do that, I think we've all got to work together. You know, all the people that are system thinking, we've all got to unify and come together and actually start to really solve what that unified system looks like, but from a perspective of giving people choice and being able to move freely across it, and what the potential is for that when we all start to really work together. So I'm totally down. I really want to make sure that that's what we're doing and how we're operating. So yeah, brilliant. It's been absolute pleasure having a natter with you guys again. And yeah, let's let's just stay on this, and you know, and then, you know, let's just keep on touching base and stuff anyway. And you know, as soon as I've had a chat with Andrea about having a group conversation with you. I know she's got to move house next week, so might be a little bit choppy and changey, but as soon as I can tie her down to a meeting, then I'll let you guys know and we'll set something up.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Media-centric referral networks. So like any kind of media network, it would be great to see them from a viewer's perspective, and someone that actually is wanting to collaborate and see things follow a productive path. This is like a referral network actually being implemented within these media networks. So I'm Chris Thorns, or I'm what's his name that says
Joe Rogan.
or Joe Rogan, right? They're talking about these different topics, and like on screen you could have this visual of the topic and the if this or then that decision in the matrix, so people can kind of put together on a synaptic level and how things associate, forks in the road, stuff like that, and then go, okay, well, if you want to help with this situation, you need to go over here to look at the resources and see what they've compiled, and actually like be on screen and really help foster that network aspect of people co-working and co-building together, as well as co-learning.
Yeah.
Helping to foster the engagement aspect. Like they know that their audiences love engagement. So just better facilitating that would be really big. And then also that's a huge tap in on the donation aspect. Like, okay, you want to go really hardcore for this, go right here. And that's a unified platform that everybody is co-oping, using the federated type system of, well, everybody's after women's empowerment or
Vertical gardening.
Vertical gardening
or aquaponics or
whatever. And we get to go ahead and provide the metrics, those different form fields,
yeah,
in how it's going to affect the level of impact.
Yeah.
And those areas of impact take the forefront in like who's leading in this area.
Yeah, well,
so where do you want the money?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually connected with some really amazing agencies that actually they've been developing the tools for actually doing all of the measurement of metrics around a lot of that. So, I know some people that have already, they've been
Awesome.
building out that stuff for ages, and they're actually pretty, they're pretty on point around that. So yeah, that's definitely something that we can have some further conversations about. Anyway, listen, I'm gonna have to go. I'm a minute late, so I'll speak to you guys again soon.
Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. Take it easy. Bye.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.